Thank you.
It's great to see you here.
Great to see you.
New York is home for you.
It is.
Why New York rather than California, since you're in the business you're in?
I guess because in New York, there's so much going on, you can't believe that what you're doing is particularly important. Yeah. So I find that reassuring.
Yes, it keeps you balanced.
It does.
It's the reason I go home to North Carolina a lot, to make sure that I stay somehow in touch with something. Tell me how you choose a role and how this particular role, in a sense, met that standard and provided some interest for you.
This one was a little different. Usually what I do is I just read for the story. Yeah. You know, if it's a great story, then I'm hooked. And the director, if I feel he has a very strong vision, or she, and then really the role is the least important thing. I think in this case, the big draw was the director, Roman Polanski, who I think is one of the great directors we have, an opportunity to work with him. And then I think, again, the story, the idea of playing this woman who hasn't been able to talk about what happened to her for 15 years. And I've worked with a human rights group for a number of years now, and I've met a lot of people who unfortunately have gone through something like this.
Have suffered torture or been in jail for political reasons.
Yes, and I guess I always was looking for a way to express what I've gotten from them, what I've heard from them in my work, and so this was the perfect opportunity.
Why is Polanski interesting to you as a director?
Well, for one thing, he's sort of a dictator, and there aren't too many of those.
I thought all directors were dictators.
Well, maybe they try to be, but I think Roman is one of the few who has what it takes to be an excellent director, one that you both, you know, fear and love. He, in the European tradition, the first thing he did was read the script aloud to us, playing all the parts, you know. And Ben and Stu were like, but it was fascinating, especially to hear him play Paulina, because, you know, there is he didn't sentimentalize any of the story. You know, for those people who were sort of dreading an earnest human rights picture, this certainly is not it. And all the parts were so strong. He was interested in all of them. It was very much an idea of who's speaking the truth now. I mean, he never said this is Paulina's story or the doctor's story. He was interested in all three people in the roles they play.
And the film you don't know in the end whether in fact this doctor is the person who raped your character or not. As
you don't know till the end.
You don't know till the end. Yeah. And I assume that a director has a real challenge here. If this is a play, and how do you translate a play to film? What's hard about it?
Well, I think that one of the big decisions that Roman made was not to open it up, but to keep it a very claustrophobic, almost suffocating sort of still life of malevolent, passionate feeling.
Most of the action takes place inside of one house.
Right, inside this little house on a sort of desolate cliff in the pouring rain. It's very Hitchcockian, and it's a very intense night. And I'm sure, you know, watching it, you're sort of fascinated by it, but wanting to leave at the same time. And I think that, in a way, that's Roman's forte, this sort of claustrophobic feeling of what's going to happen next. Anything can happen to one of these three people, or all of them, and what's it going to be?
You said about him, he's always opening up Pandora's box. What do you mean?
Try to remember.
Okay, well, but tell me what he's doing. I don't want to, that's not fair to you, but in a sense of how does he get the best performance out of his
It's very interesting.
Players?
He doesn't come with a preconceived notion of how the film should look, how the scene should look, and he's very resistant to anyone asking a question. You know, if you come down with your script and say, "Oh, Roman, I have a question about," not a good idea. He gets very cranky when you do that. And I think the idea is that he wants you, the actors, to do the scene so he can see it live, and then if you have a question, maybe you can ask it. But he wants to see it without your thinking about it too much. He just wants to see what will happen. And then he figures out how to make the camera capture that. So he's a very, you know, he's not an intellectual director. He wants to see if he believes it, then he'll film it that way. And so in a way, even though he's a dictator, he's taking everything you have. A lot of it is dependent on what you bring, you know.
Working with great actors like Ben Kingsley, does it make you better? Does it impact on your work? Does it draw something from you?
I think definitely. I think Ben was one of the greatest actors I've ever worked with, and you get to know someone pretty well when you're tying them up and gagging them, and
and taking your panties and stuffing them in his mouth.
That too, and we ended the film really loving each other. You know, it's difficult to sort of torture someone for 5 weeks without their developing a real trust. And I'm happy to say that in all that time I never hurt him or hardly touched him, in fact. But I also feel that Ben loved Roman's. He said that Roman gave him a very narrow target to go for, and that liberated him. And that was an interesting thing to hear.
You know what the target was? I mean, a narrow target meaning that there were a very careful definition to the character he...
I don't think it had to do with character as much as what a moment is. Roman could always tell you what it wasn't.
Yeah.
And he gave us tremendous flexibility within a certain range. I mean, you had real freedom. If you watch Ben's confession, hardly a confession, but
no.
If you watch Ben in his big speech, you know, there's so many things going on. I mean, it's such fascinating work. And he did about 5 takes, and they were all so filled with different things. Now, you would never have known that a director had given him any specific direction on it, but I'm sure Roman did, you know.
Do you see, when you see Ben on the stage, when you're there and you're confined and you know, and I assume you go out to dinner and all those things while you're there on location, but when you are acting, do you have to see him? I mean, you have to take yourself to a place where you see yourself as a woman who's been raped and believes this is the man that did it and has lived with all the pain and remembers the music death of a maiden, of the maiden, and remembers all of that. Do you have to look into his eyes and see that?
Yes.
You know, it's obvious.
All of you that's working as Paulina looks into all of Ben that's working as the doctor and sees what we need to see. Yes.
Yeah, he is Roberto. No
during the takes, yes.
Yeah. Let me take a look at this. This is our first clip. It is. This is when he's being put on trial. Here it is. Roll tape. Before I look at another clip here, how did you prepare for this? I mean, you have a reputation for trying to know as much as you can about.
Well, it was a little daunting.
Yeah.
I felt a great responsibility, I must say. Through my human rights organization, I got in touch with several women who have been through this experience, and I met with all of them, and I spent a great deal of time with a couple of them. And I also met with a psychiatrist who treats torture victims. And the good thing about all of this, you know, these people who are very generous to me with their personal experiences, is that I got a real sense not only of what that experience was like when it happened, but the real challenge was in figuring out, well, not figuring out, but sensing what happens in the 15 years afterward when you can't express any of it, when the one person who knows about it is someone you can't talk to about it, which is your husband. What the toll that takes on you, because I think that's what the night comes out of. It's that you don't want to live with that on you anymore. Yeah. And that was to me the biggest challenge. And I also, happily for me, Roman as an actor has worked with a coach named Jack Walzer in Paris, and so I worked a lot with Jack on the preparation, so that when I walked on the set, everything that was Paulina was already there to be used. That was a big advantage.
Why couldn't one tell her husband?
Well, he has to want to hear it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the saddest thing.
Because it's almost true. I mean, go ahead.
Well, the saddest thing is that after what she's been through in prison, then when she gets out, I think the only thing that's keeping her going is the idea that she saved this man that she loves and that they're going to have a life together, that they believe in the same things, and he's with another woman. Right. I think that, in a way, is more hurtful to her than what's happened in prison. And for whatever reason...
He was with another woman while she was in prison.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. And I think they just... You see, in fact, to be quite truthful, I didn't hear of any woman who's still with the man that she was with before she went into prison. It's very difficult for these relationships to survive a normal life after something like this has happened. And the whole thing is very complicated. There are even cases of where the woman has ended up marrying the man who tortured her. It's a very complicated...
How do you explain that? I mean, it's a sort of Stockholm syndrome in some ways.
Yes. Well, I think that she was finally going into therapy. I wasn't, you know, again, I just spoke to the doctor who was treating her. It's a very complicated situation.
And what is it you saw as your own challenge? I mean, what is it was most important for you as an actress in this performance to bring out about this person? I mean, what should I watch this film and experience about Paulina, who has gone through this horrible thing and lives with it in her mind to this day, and all of a sudden walking into a room is the man that subjected her in her mind to everything?
Well, I think there's a lot of horror, but I think what I feel, and I think what Roman felt, people, the way you deal with it, for instance, he mentioned one thing to me only, and he said, you know, my father was in a concentration camp. Yes. And when he and his buddies got together, when they talked about the camp, it wasn't this sort of, you know, desperate sort of, you know, earnest, emotional, straightforward thing. It was like, remember that fat guard who used to, you know, had those funny dentures. You know, they treat it roughly because it's part of your personal landscape. And it's, if you want to make jokes of it, it's yours. You get to make jokes about it. You know, other people can treat you like a broken object, but you get to treat it. It's your property, this thing that happened to you. That was, to me, the thing that I wanted. When I listened to these women talk, it was a lot of different things. And sometimes, I remember one woman, she was very matter-of-fact about the whole thing. And then one day she just mentioned that a guard had brought her underpants home to his wife to wash and bring back because he saw that her clothes were filthy, and he did this thing for her. And that made her cry, talking to me last year. So you never know. I mean, what was fascinating was that you can't predict. And I didn't want it to ever feel like a movie. I wanted literally to be Paulina out on that deck telling that story for the first time and seeing what happened. I wasn't going for anything, and Roman let me do that. You know, we weren't going for theatrics. We were just...
Was it filmed in sequence, or was it filmed out of sequence, as most films are?
Pretty much in sequence.
You know, because of its one location, because of the...
Which was wonderful.
Based on a play. Ariel Dorfman wrote the screenplay in part, he and Roman together, or he and someone else?
Rafael Iglesias worked very closely with Roman on the screenplay, and I think Ariel had something to do with it, too.
Here is one more. Set this up for me. Well, you may not know. It's Death in the Maiden. The key word here is captive. I don't know exactly what scene this is, but take a look. Here it is. We know the storyline. Take a look. Powerful stuff. Yeah. Was it exhausting for you? Emotionally?
In a good way, I think.
In a good way. Good.
We felt a little, I know Ben and I both felt sort of like this at the end. But what was good was that at the end of each day you would have expressed a little more. It made me envy people who'd done it on stage because they would get to kind of get rid of it every night.
Now, who played the character on stage in the United States?
Glenn Close.
Glenn Close did, and who was Ben Kingsley on stage in America?
It was Gene Hackman.
Well, that's right. And the other actor?
Richard Dreyfuss.
Richard Dreyfuss, right. Dreyfuss played the husband, and Hackman played...
And the doctor.
Played
Gene
the doctor,
Hackman, right. I didn't see it.
The gun, holding the gun there. There's a story also that Roman, wanted you to sort of work with someone about handling a gun so they would have the ring of authenticity.
I took lessons.
Or maybe it was your idea.
No. In fact, it was a very good idea because I'm sure it's one of the first things Paulina did.
Yeah.
Because, in fact, if you're in a dictatorship for 15 years, there's a lot of unfinished business. They could come back at any moment, and I'm sure she decided she would not go back. So I think the first thing she did was really learn how to use a gun. And so I went to a very elegant firing range in Paris, and I went several times, and it was very interesting. Actually.
First time you'd held a gun, or?
First time I'd held such a small gun.
Yeah, right. I want to talk about Aliens in a minute, but Copycat has been, you've completed production on that.
Yes.
And you also, the story is you also spent some time with a psychiatrist who interviewed Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yes, Dr. Park Dietz.
Yeah. And what did he say? And what, I mean, this is about a serial killer, I guess, is
Yes.
involved in the film.
He was fascinating. We spent about 10 hours just going through every word of the script,
Yeah.
basically to tech up my character, because I'd seen him on court TV, and
Yeah.
he was...
Your character is?
Helen Hudson, who's a forensic psychiatrist. She's had a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
Sort of my neurotic phase. And she's an agoraphobic now, but she knows her stuff. And he taught me how to look at crime photos, how to interview criminals. I mean, I learned a great deal. Not that I want his job at all, but it was fascinating, fascinating research, and very helpful to all of us on the film.
Mm.
He also worked, in fact, with Billy McNamara, who played one of the killers.
Yeah. Is it a true story that you went to Stanford,
Mm-hmm.
and you got a bachelor's degree there, I guess, in English or something, and then you came to Yale Drama School, and a lot of people, interesting people were there.
Yes.
Meryl was a class behind you. I guess Wendy may have been around some
Wendy
point.
was
There
in my
Wendy,
class.
Chris Durang, and a
Mhm.
lot of other people that have made reputations for themselves, that they did not believe that you were going to have a great career. Is that
Or any career
Or any career.
whatsoever.
I mean, because Gary Oldman was here the other night, and
Uh-huh.
he talked about the fact that he tried to get into the Royal School of Drama, whatever it is, the classy school over the Royal Academy of Drama, something, RADA, Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, I think it is, and they turned him down. Said, you know, I mean, it's just these stories of people who. So what did it do to your sense of mission and your sense of wanting to do this when someone who's watched you there after you're, say, sorry? You know, we don't
They
think
didn't
you're
say
going
sorry. They went,
They just
guess
said,
what?
you don't
You're not
have
gonna-"
it, kid.
Exactly. They couldn't have been more
And they thought they were
cruel.
probably doing you a favor,
Totally.
you know,
Totally.
because you would have a very frustrating, futile life because you wanted to be in the theater and you didn't have the talent.
And I was not ambitious. I just wanted to play
Yeah.
a few roles
know,
in
you
the
weren't saying,
theater,
"I wanna
you
be
know.
a star." You're just
Exactly,
saying-
you know.
Yeah.
That was, you know, it came out of nowhere. And the thing that was sort of harsh about it was that there were teachers in that room who I think believed in me a little bit,
Yeah.
and no one spoke up. I mean, it was a total, I mean, that's a real dictatorship.
Yeah.
I think graduate school is very overrated.
Yeah, law school. Yeah, well, yeah, right. You wouldn't go back to the Yale School of Drama then if you, whether it was Yale or not, you wouldn't go to drama school. You'd do something else.
I would
You.
not. But the good thing is that I worked with wonderful playwrights like Christopher Durang
Right.
and Alberto Norato and Wendy Wasserstein, and they kept casting me both at school and in New York when I first came to New York. And that's eventually I sort of got the idea that maybe, you know, maybe I don't have to believe what these people said, but I know, I mean, this sounds pathetic, but my biggest mistake was in believing what those teachers said or paying attention to it. You know, I should have.
Yeah.
But at that age, you know, you're very vulnerable, and these are people you're paying to tell you the truth.
And you have some sense, look, they've seen all these people, then they know what...
They must know
They
what-
must know, and then something must be wrong with me.
I'm sure one of
Maybe-
the big reasons I did this part was because I needed to prove something to myself, because I never felt they told me straight out that I could never play a big dramatic role.
And so this was a challenge.
This was my challenge, yeah.
What was the breakthrough for you? Way back before. I mean, what was the first, when you said to yourself, aha, they're wrong, I can do this? Or have you felt that yet?
No, I have, thank God, or I wouldn't be sitting here. Every time I was in a comedy, I mean,
Yeah.
I remember when I worked with Chris Durang, I played a multiple schizophrenic in one of
Yeah.
his plays, Titanic, and I got to play 3 very different parts, and all in one night, and it was a real workout, and I had a blast. And I knew then that they may not like what I do,
Yeah.
but I had a small gift for a certain kind of theater, and it was what I enjoyed more than anything, and I felt I would be all right. But if not for people like Chris and Wendy, I really would not be here today, because they kept, you know, encouraging me. And
Yeah. Did people compare you with Meryl back then?
no,
Yeah.
oh God, no. Are you kidding? She
Yeah.
was incredible, you know,
Yeah.
as
And
a student.
Yeah.
But they were
all-
hard on her too, actually.
They didn't tell her she wouldn't make it.
No, I don't think so, but I think they were hard
They
on
did-
her in some way. You know, they were hard on everybody. This is part of their philosophy, you know, break them down. My husband went after
They
I
probably
did.
told Wendy she couldn't write.
Oh, I'm sure they did. They were horrible to Wendy.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. the men definitely had an advantage at Yale.
We got to get these guys from these
I
guys
wish you
from Yale
would.
down here and have it
Absolutely.
and put you and Wendy and Chris and a bunch of people who came from the Yale Drama School.
Have Robert
And-
Brustein down.
Robert Brustein. Well, maybe we will. We'll see. The breakthrough role, though, in terms of what brought you to public attention, was what you think in your mind?
Well, I'm sure it was Ripley in Alien.
It was the first, but you became a star there. I mean,
Well,
but-
in fact,
I mean,
I
Ripley's,
didn't ever have a big part on stage. I mean, I had good parts,
Yeah.
but I never. Trying to think.
Yeah.
I was, from total obscurity.
But did you have any sense? I mean, when you first saw that, when it was proposed to you, because it's now viewed, I think, as one of the great, over the last number of years, last 10 years, as one of that trilogy is one of the better female roles.
Oh, for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Strong, tough, independent, all those things that women want to play. Yes?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you recognize it instantly? Did you say, yes?
What I recognized, well, when I
Or
read
would you
the
say
script.
another sci-fi and who wants to do this?
Well, the first time I read it, I went, science fiction,
Yeah.
such a snob.
Yeah,
But I
right.
want to do
Oh, yes.
Shakespeare. And then I met Ridley Scott, and I saw the designs, Giger's designs, and I
Yeah.
thought, whoa, I've never seen anything like this. And I thought it would be an adventure. I didn't think it would do anything for me because, in fact, if you're told that you can't, work in the theater, you're certainly not going to change anybody's mind by being in a science fiction picture. So I did it just because I thought it would be interesting. I liked the character of Ripley. In fact, it's quite a small part in the first movie. It was really Jim Cameron's vision of Ripley in the second movie that I think made it into a really full character.
And when they wanted to do the second one, did you want to?
I was busy working in France, and they sent me the script, and I was actually so moved that a director I'd never met would sit down and write such a great part for me, in this day and age where women's parts were so hard to come by. I was so moved by that act of faith in me that I wanted to do it in the second.
Yeah, and then the third?
The third...
Which is a little different from the first two.
The third, we had more problems. Each time you do a film in a certain series, the challenge becomes greater to find enough original elements. And I guess that was one reason why I thought it would be a good idea to die, because I felt there was only so many times you could wake up and go, oh, there's a thing loose on the ship.
And you could do that because you were the co-producer. You had
Yes.
some power from 20th Century.
A little bit.
Little bit.
Yeah.
But didn't you involved in hiring David Fincher as the...
They actually talked to me about it.
Yeah.
It was Fox found him, and then everyone met him, and I think I was the last person to meet him, and I was a little nervous because we'd had another director who sort of had Ripley lying in a coma for 45 minutes in his script, and I thought, I'd like to find someone who's going to make use of me. I don't want to be working on a picture for 6 months, comatose. And I liked Fincher right away. I thought he was great.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to him, so how do you see the character of Ripley? And he said, bald.
Yeah. And you said, I like that.
Yeah.
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 The act of producing, would it be different? Would Hollywood be a very different place if we had more women in power out there? Would we see a lot of different kinds of movies or would women react the same way that men do, male executives, in saying, look, we're trying to make those movies that public wants to go see, and we just go by the numbers, and that's what we're doing?
I don't think sex really has a lot to do with it. I
I mean,
think
Sherry Lansing is at Paramount.
right, and I also think that sometimes women make very sort of macho choices.
Yes.
But I think that what has saved Hollywood, what has saved a lot of our careers, is the fact that the independent companies have had a boom in the last few years, getting a lot of reaction from very interesting movies, like this movie that's out, Heavenly Creatures.
Sure.
It's a
Or
startling
you could even go back and look at
film.
Crying Game and some
Absolutely.
other things like that. And
That's what has kept the business stimulated. That's what I think is keeping everybody on their toes artistically and giving everybody hope that there's a kind of width and breadth in our industry for all kinds of different stories. I don't think it has anything to do with sex or power. It has to do with someone coming in who doesn't care as much, who doesn't care about the box office.
has anyone come out there with real power and said to you, Sigourney, what do you want to do? Just tell us the kind of movie you'd like to make. And we'll put it together with a great director and a great screenwriter. I mean, what kind of part? Here you've been nominated 3 times for Working Girl, Gorillas in the Mist, and Aliens. You know, you clearly have box office. Tell us what you'd like to do.
Well, I think people have said that to me.
Dear Mr. Rose, you're a little naive.
It makes me very nervous for people to go at it that way, because I'm not interested in things that are built around me.
Yeah. Out of fear or out of you?
I just don't think they make good stories. I think it's a kind of backward way to do it.
Yeah.
If that's just me.
Right.
I have my own production company with Fox, and one of the things we've done in the last year is set up a deal with New Dramatists, which is a group of 35 playwrights that are always changing. And because they never have any money, we wanted to put money in the pockets of playwrights and get in return first drafts of sort of screenplays of their dreams. And the idea was to bring new voices, new forms, a whole new way of looking at film, you know, because the whole film is just breaking down and coming right back up again. I mean, a lot is happening. And I think I want the studios to have access to that energy. So as a producer, that's really where I come from. Whereas the idea of creating something, there is one project I'd love to do, which is Yukio Mishima's Black Lizard. I've owned it for several years, and it's
a great Japanese
playwright.
It
is, and we saw it on stage in Japan. It's an amazing evening, and Marty Scorsese is co-producing it with me. But it's difficult to find the right person to bring this. You know, everything I want to do personally is so ambitious that, you know. And I want to do it all myself, and I have to find it.
Paul Schrader is obsessed by Yukio Mishima.
Yes,
You
yes.
know, I
well,
think he made a film that was
he
based
did.
on his life or did something. The Year of Living Dangerously is your favorite film?
Well, this one is pretty, but it was the most amazing experience, and the film in which I fell in love with film, if I can say it that way.
Well,
Peter Weir
Yeah.
taught me how to enjoy making a film, you know.
What did he teach you? I mean, how do you teach someone to enjoy making a film?
Well, he very crankily said to me in one of the first weeks, he said, I had no idea you were so inexperienced. And I'd just been fired by Nicol Williamson from the Scottish play. And that's always a sort of devastating experience when you're fired.
Fired at what level? After rehearsals began?
After rehearsals, mainly because I wouldn't do syllable for syllable his line readings. And then I was replaced, and she was fired. They called it Queen for a Day around New York. Anyway, so I was like already a little nervous. And then Peter would take me out to dinner, and we'd talk about film, and he'd talk to me about what my strengths were in film, and I didn't really realize I had any, what I didn't need to work on. And he in my scenes with Mel, I was able just to be, which I'd never understood before. It's a pretty simple thing, actually, and not that hard to do, just to be there.
Yeah.
And,
it's almost like in sports they have a phrase that they'll use whether playing tennis or golf, trust your stroke. You know, I mean, just don't impede what you naturally do.
Yeah, get out of your own way.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's part of what he taught you.
Yes.
There's certain things you have that are natural assets or that you have learned. They're learned assets, but you've got them and don't let, you know, don't worry about them.
Yes.
Yeah. What else have you learned, and who else has had an influence?
I've worked with a lot of really good directors.
And you come away each time, in a sense.
Knowing a little more. And actually, the longer I work, the less, you know, it's great to be an English major, but it's not really great if you're going to be an actor, because you can't really act from here, I think. I mean, this is my opinion.
You
have to, you know, sort of act from your stomach, as it were.
Did they teach that at the Yale Drama School?
They didn't teach me anything at the Yale Drama School.
God.
Sorry.
They'll never invite me up there.
Right.
Yeah.
A few nice movements, actually, but in movement class.
And how do you learn that?
How do you learn?
The acting from here. I mean, how to trust and to find it inside of you.
I think Strasberg said it took 20 years to become an actor. I think that's about right.
Yeah.
I've been an actor about 20 years. There's some people like Meryl who are just, I think...
Born?
Yeah.
You really do?
Yeah. But I've always been a real slowpoke. And
there's never been competition between, between the two of you? in a sense?
No, we even had the same agent for a long time. I used to...
Sam Cohn? Or
Sam
right.
Cohn. And I used to envy Meryl's opportunities, but I never envied her talent because I wouldn't want to do what she does. You know what I mean? But I wanted to have a chance to do what I did in my own way. And in a way, Meryl made it easier for us because she was always ahead of everybody. I mean, she was on the cover of Time like that.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, good, you know, because if Meryl didn't make it, we're all in trouble, right?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
So.
Did you, when you look at the kinds of things that you have done, I mean, are you now at a place where you're at all stereotyped in terms of, you know, when they think of you, they think because of Ripley, they think of a strong woman, they think of...
Well, in fact, I guess when I look at it, I don't feel I do play strong women. I feel I play isolated women, in a way. Women in isolation for some reason who are forced to fight. And I guess I feel that women are
forced
strong.
to depend on themselves.
Yes, exactly. Diane Fossey, even the woman I played in Dave, Ellen, she's very isolated. And so because of the situation they're in, they have to be strong. No one else is going to help them. And I guess I think women are strong. I think women have to be strong because they have, you know, children to raise and decisions to make. And
did you enjoy Working Girl?
Oh, yes. I love working with Mike. He's great. And
what did he bring to you?
Well, it was the second time I'd worked with him. And he's just so gracious. You know, he gives you some great idea for your character, and you go up and you say, gosh, Mike, thanks so much. That was great. And he goes, casting is 90%. You know, I mean,
he said that here. Yeah,
he's just,
90,
you know,
find the right actors and you can make it work.
Yeah, I mean, and the other good thing about that was we had rehearsal. We had like 2 weeks of rehearsal, and it was
probably comes from the theatrical side of him.
Yes, and I think that was where Melanie and Harrison, all of us, just sat down and sort of figured out where we were. I loved playing Catherine.
I would think so. It was just a different kind of place to go.
Yes, and she was an awful character, and I don't think I get a chance to play those awful characters very much. And it was very liberating, you know.
Are there people like, if Woody Allen called, you'd be there?
Well, he offered me my first part, in fact, and I'm in Annie Hall.
I know, it was a small, tiny, yeah.
I'm still waiting for Woody Allen to call again. I think I'm going to have to call him.
If Ivan Reitman calls.
Oh, in a second.
In a second, you're there.
In a second, yeah. I love working with the same people again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you were in Dave and you were in Ghostbusters with him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He's wonderful.
When you saw the what's the name? What's the film with Schwarzenegger?
Junior.
Junior.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought Emma Thompson was brilliant, wonderful. I was jealous, but I thought she was great. Yeah.
Anything missing for you? I mean, you've got a wonderful daughter. You've got evidently a terrific marriage to James Simpson, who's a director. You're getting work that you like to do, like this part. You're coming off a Copycat with Holly Hunter. Anything missing? I mean, is there something inside of you that burns?
Probably something burns in me to do more comedy.
Yeah.
There's such a crossroads, I think, constant crossroads for women who have families, which is you have all these things you'd really like to do. I'd like to make funny documentaries, for instance.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds weird. But with a child, your most important job is to be with that person, and to keep the world a decent place. You know, so inevitably you curb whatever creative thing you want to do, and you get involved a lot in the community, a lot with your family, and all of these things are, I think, blessed things. You know. But I must say that I don't think, you know, Katharine Hepburn is right. You cannot do it all.
You cannot. No.
I think you can have it all at different times, but you can't do it all. At least I can't.
And that may be the way it ought to be. I thank you for doing this. It's
My
a pleasure
pleasure.
to have you here. Very much.
Very much.
Death of the Maiden with Ben Kingsley. Guess who's coming up? Ben Kingsley. Back in a moment.